Hello, I'm State Senator John Kavanagh, and welcome to another edition of Kavanagh's Corner, my weekly, during the session, legislative report to my constituents. Well, this edition of Kavanagh's Corner will deal with my bills that were signed into law, vetoed, and passed out of the legislative chamber for the week of April 24th. Let's begin with the bills that were signed by the governor. The first one is SB 1036, setting aside conviction certificate eligibility. This bill will allow for certain individuals who were convicted of misdemeanors and some low-grade felonies that didn't involve violence, who can show to a judge that they're totally reformed and will not do it again, to have those convictions set aside so that they will have a clean record when they try to go for jobs or perhaps get an apartment. So that's SB 1036, signed by the governor. The governor also signed SB 1049, Homeowners Association's Betsy Ross flag. I have been in a perpetual battle with rogue, draconian homeowners association throughout my 17 years in the legislature. I've had to pass laws to protect constituents from unreasonable actions by them. This session's unreasonable HOA action was one HOA banned people from flying the Betsy Ross flag. Now, that's the first flag of the United States. Arizona law already allows individuals to fly any American flag, and that should include the Betsy Ross flag. But this HOA apparently took issue with whether, in fact, that was an American flag. So this bill I introduced, and it's been signed by the governor, so get those Betsy Ross flags out, you HOA members. You can now fly them proudly. SB 1134 was an appropriation for named claimants. This bill simply authorizes us to pay lawsuit settlements that the state has incurred over the course of the last year. And the final bill last week that was signed by the governor is SB 1270, Open Meetings Capacity. This bill was inspired by my experience going about 2 years ago to a Scottsdale school board meeting on a very controversial issue. My parents and myself were protesting what we thought to be unreasonable COVID masking policies. It was expected to be a large turnout. There was a lot of publicity, and the meeting was to start at 6 o'clock. I got there at 5:30, figuring that's plenty of time to get in, only to be told that there was limited seating capacity and that it was already full. Now, I don't know if the school board told people that were friendly to their position to get there early at 5, so the rest of us were locked out, but it doesn't make any difference. Myself and many parents were locked out. So what this bill does is two things. It says to any government entity, county, state, local, sewer board, when they post a meeting agenda, not only must they say what time the meeting starts, but they also have to say what time the doors open. And in addition, if they reasonably anticipate an extra large turnout and they have another room that's larger, they must use the larger venue so people, again, aren't locked out. Those are the bills that the governor signed. Unfortunately, it's yin and yang, so the governor also vetoed some of my bills. The first bill that she vetoed was SB 1005, Unjustified Actions, Parental Rights. In Arizona, we have an existing Parents' Bill of Rights, which gives parents significant say in what their children are taught and what their children aren't taught, and access to records involving their children. However, the way that a parent can enforce a violation of this is they have to sue the school district. Now, based on the civil court rules, if a parent were to lose, and because this is civil law, the parents could have made a 49% argument, but the school had a 51% and the parent loses just by a hair. Well, in those cases, the parent must pay the legal expenses of the school district, which could be tens of thousands of dollars. This changes that law to state that a parent does not have to pay the school district's legal fees if they lose, so long as the judge does not rule it to be a frivolous or harassing lawsuit. The governor also vetoed SB 1009, Criminal Damage Monuments and Memorials. Several years ago, I think we all sat in our living rooms horrified at the visions across the country of mobs of rioters tearing down statues to famous Americans. Well, that's technically criminal mischief. And if a person defaces a statue, the damage level might be small in terms of the value of the damage, but very great in terms of the harm done. Statues aren't like window panes. Statues are monuments that people, often governments, put up to honor individuals. And just like we have an additional penalty if you vandalize the tombstone of a person, so too should the penalty be enhanced if you destroy or mark up a monument. And this bill would have done that, but it was vetoed by the governor. SB 1021, Attorney General Legislature legal challenges, was also vetoed by the governor. Last year, I wrote and had signed into law by Governor Ducey a bill that said if you're going to videotape with your phone police officers engaged in law enforcement activity, when it's a dangerous activity, an arrest, handling an emotionally disturbed person, you had to stay back 10 feet for everybody's safety. It was signed into law, but the ACLU challenged it, and a federal judge put an injunction on it. Much to my surprise, Attorney General Brnovich refused to defend the law in court, and as a result, there was no defense and the law is now gone. This bill will require our Attorney General to defend state laws because that is the job of the Attorney General of the state of Arizona. Finally, SB 1024, Public Rights of Way Unlawful Acts. Anybody who drives around cities and even some suburbs will occasionally see homeless people camped out on the streets and sidewalks and under bridges and the like. This should be illegal. It's illegal camping. And at its worst, you have what's happening in Phoenix, which is an area called the Zone, a 15 square block area not far from the Capitol, where hundreds and hundreds of people live in tents or under tarps and other makeshift structures. It's lawless, it's unsanitary, there's drug abuse, drug overdoses. My bill simply would have said that it's illegal to set up tents or similar structures in roadways or on sidewalks. The governor apparently disagreed, so she vetoed it, so unfortunately that will not be illegal on a statewide basis. Moving on, a number of my bills passed out of the legislature, and as a result they will be heading to the governor's office for hopefully signature and not veto. The first one, SB 1007, Nuclear Emergency Management Appropriations. Every year the operators of the Palo Verde nuclear power plant, the co-owners, different utilities, have to pay money into a fund, and that fund gives money to local first responders, police, and fire to practice the emergency drills in the unlikely event that there was some sort of an emergency leakage or what have you at the power plant. This is the legislation which allows those monies to be expended and distributed to those first responders so these safety bills can take place. SB 1038, Probate Advisory Panel Establishment. Probate is when you or somebody else is no longer mentally capable of caring for themselves, or it could be a child who's too young to care for themselves, and the state steps in and a probate judge will appoint somebody to be a guardian and to make decisions for that person. It usually runs smoothly, it's necessary, but there have been abuses. This particular bill creates a panel of experts from the courts, lawyers, family members who've been victimized that will try to get some better safeguards in the probate system to protect people from being abused by the system and to give it more transparency. SB 1060, Animal Owner's Definition. SB 1060 states simply that, well, under current Arizona law, if you possess an animal, a dog or a cat, for more than 10 days, it becomes your animal. You just can't walk into a shelter and say, I found this animal. So the Maricopa County Shelter, which has been in turmoil for the last couple of years, was asking volunteers from nonprofit rescues to take home some of the dogs because they were overstocked and watch them on behalf of the shelter. Well, after 10 days, some of these people said, well, I can't watch the dog anymore, I want to bring him in. And the shelter turned around and said, no, you can't because you've had that dog more than 10 days, he's your dog now. Well, that's ridiculous because they had him because the shelter asked them to take them as a favor, a temporary favor. So this bill changes the definition and doesn't count towards that 10-day ownership rule, time that you had the animal at the request of a dog pound. SB 1067 sets up a study committee for animal control standards. There's a lot of differences in the way pounds and shelters deal with animals in terms of medical care, square foot per animal, training standards, safeguards. There are some differences, rural versus urban, in the way they're run. This committee will get experts from all levels of this field, people who operate pounds, shelters, humane animal people, dog catchers. We're going to get them all on one committee and try to develop some reasonable statewide standards that they can all aspire to. In addition, SB 1068, police dogs emergency treatment. This bill says that if a working police dog is injured in the line of duty, an ambulance will transport that dog to the nearest veterinary clinic capable of treating that dog, so long as no human requires the ambulance at that time. The distance is no more than 30 miles away, and there is a backup ambulance so that if a human call comes in while the ambulance is doing this, there'll be an ambulance for the human. Some of those things were put in at the request of the rural ambulance districts because they often only have one ambulance. So again, a SWAT dog, drug dog, if they're injured, the ambulance will be able to transport them. After all, these dogs are risking their own lives and safety to protect us. By the way, that's like 3 animal bills. I do a lot of animal bills. In fact, most of the animal humane bills that have gone out of the legislature in the last 10 years have been my bills. I'm a 3-time recipient of the United States Humane Society Legislator of the Year Award, which I'm very proud of. The final bill, SCR1021, which passed out of the legislature, will be simply publicly stating the support that we have for the United States and Taiwan partnership. In these troubling times with China threatening Taiwan, we wanted to make a public statement that we stand by Taiwan. I certainly do. So that's it for this week's edition of Kavanagh's Corner. And I'll be coming back next week with more news about my bills, and hopefully I'll have a little bit more of an update on the budget. The Republican side of the budget has been negotiated between ourselves. We know what we want. We're still waiting for the Democrats to decide what they want to do with their share of the excess revenues. I'm not holding my breath. They don't have much practice doing this, but, well, hopefully there'll be a quick learn. So again, State Senator John Kavanagh, this was Kavanaugh's Corner. Thanks for watching.